Hello, hello. Um, so a couple of things for Sunday. I won't be here. I'll be in Michigan. Tara's cousin is getting married in Michigan, and so that's where we'll be this weekend. I'm actually flying out tonight after the fuse, and but Chris Rothert will be here, and he will give announcements, and he will give a recap, and then send everybody to small group. So if you have any questions, Chris Rothert will be there. Your small group papers will be in those things on the wall, the new things, and just look for your grade. It'll have the roster on one side, and so that'll be flipped out and you can find it, and then the questions for the day will be on the other side. So this week, what we're going to look at is Philippians. It's the Philippians chapter 2, verses 5 through 18, so kind of the rest of the second chapter of Philippians, and I'm super excited about tonight. So what we're going to talk about is image and images that point to certain things, and hopefully that'll make sense in a few minutes. So the first thing that we'll talk about is man versus food, and how, and this will be kind of silly hopefully, but when he goes to these places and does these competitions, he gets his picture taken and put on the wall, and anybody who accomplishes these great eating feats gets their picture taken and put on the wall. And basically what that is saying is it's an image saying this person has dominated this challenge, and this person has dominated what this event or whatever. Then we'll talk about so we'll say that that's an image, and when you want to know who has destroyed or who has beaten that challenge, you look to the picture, you look to the image. We'll then go jump to and talk about how back in the day, the Bible days, when Rome or when somebody would conquer a city, they didn't have internet, and they didn't have cell phones, and they didn't have all this stuff where they could see who potentially was ruling over them. And so what they would do, because they didn't have those things, is the king or the emperor would put a statue in the middle of the city, so that when the people had questions about who was in charge or who was in control, they would just have to look to the statue, and they could see the image of the person who had conquered them and who was ruling over them potentially, and what that looks like. So then we're going to jump to this passage where it talks about who Jesus was, and it's just this great familiar passage about he did not consider equality with God as something to be grasped, but took on the very nature of a servant and came and lived among us and walked among us. And so we're going to talk about that Jesus was the image of God, that Jesus was the image in the midst of our sin and darkness and chaos, to show who was in charge and what that looked like to live and to breathe and be a part of this kingdom. And so when we had questions about what it looked like to be a part of the kingdom and what it looked like to be in the kingdom, here's Jesus as the image, the statue, the representative, and when people had questions and what it looked like, this passage gives us great detail about what it looks like, and how we or who we are to look for to and for guidance and what that looks like. And then the last piece is the piece I'm really excited about. Then we're going to look at Genesis chapter 1. And I forgot to tell you this, but the word used for the image of the emperor or king in the middle of the city is this Hebrew word. It's Salem, and it's spelled T-S-E-L-E-M. It'll probably be at the bottom of the screen. I think I'm going to put it in here so you can see what it looks like. Salem, and so then we're going to jump to Genesis 1, and what Genesis 1 does, it has this great picture of God entering into the chaos and the craziness of the world, and he doesn't get rid of it, but he conquers it, and he doesn't destroy it, but he tells it what it can do, how far it can come, and it's just a really cool picture of God entering into and conquering what was here. And if you look at the, I think it's Genesis 1:27, when God creates human beings, it has this beautiful picture of God setting this creation of humanity right in the middle of what has been conquered. And the Hebrew word, one of the Hebrew words is, it was God Salem. And so we're going to go through these different images and ideas of seeing who has conquered what things, and what humanity was in the beginning in Genesis 1 was when people looked around and said, man, who has created all this? Who is in charge of all this? Who is ruling and reigning, as he put humanity in the middle to be his image, to be his mouthpiece, to be the thing that when people are looking around and wondering, we are that image, we are that that Salem, who people should look to, and we should be the people who point people towards God. Like, why? Who is in control? Who is reigning? Who is ruling of our life, but also of what we believe, bringing all creation back to Himself. We are the people who point people to God. We are His plan to reach the world, and so it's this cool idea, and when people would have read it back then, they would have known and understood what the Salem was, and being the statue in the middle of the city and talking about who was in control and who reigned, and so a Hebrew would hear that and think, oh wow, we are that image of God. We are the ones who point people to God, and when people are wondering what this is all about, we are the image that points people and shows people who is in control and who is in charge. And then I'm going to talk briefly. There's a verse at the end of the chapter that talks about work out your salvation with fear and trembling, and so I'm going to relate it to, you know what, being that image is a serious thing. And what Paul is trying to say when he says work out your salvation with fear and trembling is he's saying take it seriously. When we're scared, or when we're or hurt, or whatever the case may be, it's a serious thing, and we give attention to those things that are hurting us, or the things that scare us potentially. And so Paul is saying have that same urgency, because it's a big deal for you to be the image. It's a big deal for you to live into that, and it's not something to take lightly. It's not something to be like, yeah, I'll be a Christian today if I feel like it. And so how do we pursue, and how do we truly live into that image and do everything we can to be the Salem, and to take it serious, and to not put it on the back burner, but to realize that it's really the point of our life, and goes back to that whole image of being in right relationship with God, pointing people towards God. And the way we do that is we have right relationship with others and with self, and what that looks like. And so super excited about tonight at the Fuse, and your questions will be attached to this as well for the Fuse, and I'm excited. If you have questions, you can text me. I'm available. You can email me. You can respond to this post on the city, and if not, be here Sunday and engage these students about how do we work out our salvation with fear and trembling, and what does it mean for us to live into that Salem, that image idea of who God has called us to be and who God created us to be, even in the very beginning. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.